Hello and welcome to a special live edition of Monstrosities Mon Amour, recorded at the Horse Hospital in London as part of Concrete Atlantis, an afternoon of music, spoken word and electronics. It says here, spontaneous audience noise. Blimey. I'm John Grindrod and I'm a sick horse, so I'm in the right place. This is a show where we get to give a big smooch to the overlooked places and misunderstood cultural artefacts that we all secretly like. And today I'm with biographer and historian and architecture writer Gillian Darley, who has managed to kidnap not only me, but a whole audience of unsuspecting punters. How you've managed to fit us all into the boot of a single Austin Maxi is a tribute to both a keen sense of spatial awareness and a singular desire for mass hijacking. So, Gillian, very nice to see you, but where the bloody hell are we?
Well, we're just packing into my Austin Maxi, which is brown.
Lovely.
And you might think that's unlikely, but the only Austin Maxi I've ever dealt with was in Portugal as a hired car. And the other thing that was strange about it, apart from the colour, was the fact that the doors kept popping open. So anyway, we'll try and stay indoors.
Great, I feel very safe.
On this journey, on little, quite secondary roads, onto a secondary spur of Essex land, going through the Dengie. It might be pronounced the dengue, but I think it's the Dengie, because the other one's a fever, and we don't like fevers, do we? So,
what are we coming to see?
well, you're not going to know till I open the boot, are you?
All right.
There is a bit of a roll in the landscape. You've got water all around. You can't see the sea a lot of the time, but you can see the estuary, the Blackwater estuary. And as we motor along, we will begin to see silver blades turning against the horizon. And if we really look carefully out of the windows, we'll see a tiny little box-like building on the far horizon. And then quite close to it, a huge box on the far horizon. So we have arrived at the Bradwell nuclear power station.
Wow. So Bradwell Nuclear Power Station isn't actually operational anymore, is it?
It's called Bradwell-A in the expectation and active, until a few years ago anyway, active belief that there would be B's, C's, D's and E's. And if you go up the coast to Sizewell, you'll see exactly what that process leads to, because they are already on sea, and no area of the country is more under attack than that stretch. Horrific. Anyway, back to Bradwell. Bradwell is sitting in its rather extraordinary kind of, it's encased. It had to be encased the moment, I'm not going to be able to give you the year, but it's been encased for a good 40 years, I think, by now. And it will be inert and, depending who you listen to, will be becoming less and less menacing in the sense of what it could do if things went wrong. I think it has a 100-year life in that form. Nobody has really got to grips with quite what happens after that. But in this case, we're not going to go and wring our hands about what would happen then, although I could and would. I'm not complacent about what that building means. But as it stands, it is a truly extraordinary object in the landscape, as are several of the other ones. I haven't trailed all the way around, but I've seen 2 or 3. And in each case, you get this, a sort of, well, you get menace, you get a thrill, you get, what is it? And of course, as a historian, I'm reminded of the fact that in the 1700s, people used to go travelling to go and look at precipices and strange phenomena in the landscape, especially overseas. And they would come back thrilled by having seen the sublime. And the sublime was part of the package. And the other side of that is the contrast, which is, you might call it the picturesque or the beautiful, which was the very gentle side of things. And as we stroll around our box, we can also see, not that close, but close enough, the tiny little barn. And there is you have your object of great beauty, because there's this tiny chapel, which lived as a barn for who knows how long, but was originally built as St Cedd's first foothold on the east coast of, in Britain. This is an absolutely extraordinary place of such antiquity and importance. 670 something, and it has it
653.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. It's a little older than I had remembered. So there's something about these two extraordinary buildings in this extraordinary place, and the reason, just a tiny sort of backtrack on the Bradwell nuclear power station, is that one of the reasons that site was chosen was its very obscurity. It's the fact that it was so far from anywhere that anyone really noticed. Well, yes, there was Mersey, and there were people in the marina who worried about what would happen if the water got a bit warm. Once the nuclear thing started, they might kind of boil up the water, and then what would happen to the shellfish, and what would happen to the sort of, going sailing through sort of tepid water. I mean, anyway, all of that came out in the ludicrous first ever public inquiry about nuclear power stations, which took place in early 1956 in Malden. It lasted, I kid you not, 5 days.
There we are. 5 days in Malden is probably, that's all we needed to know really about the entire future of the nuclear industry, wasn't it? I'm sure they covered it all.
They knew almost nothing. That was I read the transcripts which sit in the Essex Record Office of that event, and you cannot believe the level of ignorance that was coming out of, it didn't matter whether it was mainstream government, whatever. Just, we should never put our faith in what comes out of official channels.
No, but what's really interesting about this is that you were saying like this is very far away from anywhere else. Like it's quite a marooned kind of object, isn't it? It feels really absurd in the landscape. But how did you first encounter it in person?
I think I wanted to go and see the little chapel or church, and you can't. It's quite discreetly positioned on the other side of the headland, but it is very much there. And so I think I was starting to get interested. I was present at the very first public inquiry in the area, which was for Sizewell A.
Oh.
And I went to the press room. Some publication said, would I go and have a look at what's going on at the Sizewell Public Inquiry? It had by then been running for over a year. And it was, I think, certainly for a long time, it was the longest ever running public inquiry. And it was held in the Snape Maltings, which of course is very beautiful and usually resoundingly harmonious. Anyway, it was very, very weird because there were ranks and ranks of legal dignitaries. I mean, all uniformed up, all cloaked and tagged and whatever. And about 6 people in the audience, that was it. But, it had been running for some few months. And I remember going into the green room sort of afterwards, having just sort of, I don't remember hearing anything very much. And there was another fellow in there, and he said, that's extraordinary. He said, I just come from the Philippines. And I went to one there, and that took 5 days.
What a surprise. And so, but when it was built, I mean, when the power station was built and you've suddenly got this enormous, sort of structure on, in the middle of what is very flat landscape, it's really startling object, isn't it?
It is a startling object. I mean, in a way, the way it presents, because of its sort of carapace, is a box, and it's a sort of glinting box, a silver box. And what, of course, it was a multifaceted, quite elaborate set of different components on the site, almost all of which presumably were so innocuous that they could actually be removed. So when you go now, you just have the box, and then you have a certain amount of equipment, which appears to be for sending electricity around the Dengie, and a very large car park. You can't really get there by any other means. It's quite remote.
Handy for the maxi.
Sorry, yes, we're all in the maxi. It's a different sort of form now, and I think they're all in. I mean, I have seen Dungeness. In fact, I did a radio program with Sandy Toksvig, whatever that thing she used to do, the travel one. And we all went down to sit around Dungeness, and it was almost exactly the same thing. You've got this enormous box, and then the beauty, in that case, of shingle and so on, and the little random houses. I don't think... Yes, Derek Jarman's house was there by then. Anyway, I mean, by their very existence, they sort of throw up a contrast to what's around, even if it's, and it will be, somewhere very kind of unmarked by other, unused, I mean, the Dengie is intensive agriculture of a rather peculiar order. If I tell you that they grow special fat peas in enormous areas, which they harvest and then send to somewhere in the Far East, where they get sort of gussied up and sent back. It goes all the way around the world, essentially, to come back as a pub snack from there. So I just find that kind of baffling.
There's always something slightly sinister about larger than usual food growing next to a nuclear power station.
Well, it is too. Well, I mean, what is sad is that there was, on the edge, the actual coastline, which is sort of pretty close to the chapel and not so far from... So the power station is a little bit downriver, if you will. But actually, some of that is an SSI with... and there's a special cockleshell beach and so on. It's very protected, and there's a small amount of coastal marshland still there. And every year, the farmers, who are so much more on top of things than anybody else, they just cultivate a bit more. So less and less marshland, or whatever you call it, salt marsh, is left. Or that was what was happening. The encroachment's been going on and on. And I don't know who the ultimate arbiter would be. It's not a national park, it's not an AONB, and of course when the whole business started with the big building, the big box, the big nuclear power station, the chapel wasn't protected either. It was an ancient monument, but that was all it was, which wasn't a proper protection. So you started that public inquiry. There was no protection for the landscape, for anything within its district. So, which does sort of tell you how far we've come.
Yeah, and also it tells you why they chose that area as well, doesn't it? That that you could sort of it's almost like a sort of blank slate that they could do stuff too, because it was so sort of unexamined. And
it put fewer people at risk.
Yeah,
and that comes absolutely screaming off the page of the public inquiry.
Yeah,
that was why they chose those sites. I mean, the other Magnox, and the other one that was of the first range of public inquiries is to the west. I'm trying to think which the river on the Severn, but Berkeley. And that was, so they sort of ran at the same time. So one was to the west and one was to the east. But Bradwell actually got far more notice. And that was partly because a lot of people were protecting the area from it. And who should they have but living in Bradwell-on-Sea in a beautiful house just by the church, Tom Dryburgh. And Tom Dryburgh was the campaigner par excellence. He wrote in anything that he could sort of find to write in, all the time, all the time, all the time. So you see in the Times, in 1955, before the public inquiry, before anything's really started happening, he's raising hell. And he got Betchman involved, so Betchman was standing on the roof of Malden Chapel. I think it was a congregational chapel where they had the public inquiry. So he was reporting for the Spectator from the roof of that. I mean, the whole thing's just farcical. I mean, at this remove, at least. But I mean, I really, extend my hand to Tom Dryburgh. I mean, it was a fantastic effort.
This is a really kind of peculiar part of the world, isn't it? It's got long history of being connected to sort of quite uncanny moments. This is where the Martians land in War of the Worlds. If you watch the 1972 Doctor Who story Carnival of Monsters, that takes place there. So it's got a kind of sci-fi kind of thing going on in this landscape without the nuclear power station happening there. So there were kind of loads of quite uncanny, strange things going on in this place because it is so remote. I guess, you can imagine weird things happening here. Does it feel quite uncanny as an area when you're wandering around?
Well, in a sort of rather glorious way. Actually, I'm remembering the very first time I went to the Dengie, and in fact I was with a late friend who was a fantastic birder and very good company, and we were off to walk the Dengie, and we couldn't quite... To walk from Burnham all the way up is quite a long way, and to have done it twice would have been beyond us, I think. So I drove, and we left the car sort of somewhere about 3 or 4 miles north of Burnham, and we walked largely kind of along just a ditch, I'd say, but water, a stream that wasn't going anywhere particular. And I remember the first sort of 3/4 of an hour, we sort of, and it was, we had miles to go. First of all, we saw an adder. Then we saw a small apple tree where there were no trees, and we had one red apple on it. And we kind of looked at each other. We thought, bloody hell, where are we? And then I remember a kingfisher. And those 3 things remain with me. And it was a sunny day.
And an apple feels particularly symbolic. I can't think why.
A little bit primeval, I felt. A little bit so.
You think about, the Essex coastline, and you've got loads of gleaming structures all the way along it, whether it is amazing kind of yacht clubs or whether it's these kind of pleasure palaces and stuff. This is a completely different order of gleaming structure on the waterfront, isn't it?
But you see it from everywhere. It's that silver thing. Oh, there it is again. So it's absolutely monopolistic.
It's like a sort of huge piece of polystyrene packing that's come out of a giant television box that's just sat there, isn't it, out of scale. It's a very peculiar object.
Yeah. And who lives there? The peregrine falcons that J.E. Baker spent his time... Well, know the peregrine? He spent all those 10 years bicycling around the Dengie looking to see what the peregrines were up to. Quite a long time after that, the peregrines took up residence on the top of that box.
And just off the coast there, we've got kind of strange things happening as well, haven't we, with a particular radio station happening. What was the connection there with the location?
It was just sort of a strand in the back of my head, really, because I was brought up on the Essex-Suffolk border, and I was certainly not in any way able to get to anywhere for anything exciting to happen. I would have to go sort of, as it were, under the bedclothes and see what I could find on the radio, and there was Radio Caroline. In fact, it was Radio Luxembourg before that, but Radio Caroline lingered on. And so, round about the time I was about to leave school, Radio Caroline was at its zenith, I think would be the word. I'm surprised nobody has really made a very good sitcom, I think, people on could be made of pirate radio stations, because then you get the kind of crazy gang. There was, I don't know, a fellow who, I think he made a little sort of, much later on, grabbed a boat and made it his own currency and flags and all that manner of stuff.
But this was based on a boat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, there were quite a lot of them bobbing about, I think, because there was certainly another one, and there was Rowan O'Reilly is the name that I remember, who was he was a kind of pretty picturesque figure, who everybody was sort of, I think, pretty fond of, but the competition never sort of came up to his level, so he sort of ruled the waves. But I imagine that, a collection of sort of disaffected DJs. I mean, they presumably all felt that they should be somewhere else completely, but they were, in fact, in this ropey little boat.
I mean, there's quite a lot of DJs that it would be lovely to see stranded on a boat. And also it does explain why so many of them turn out to be absolute lunatics.
Yes. There's cabin fever, to say the least, yes.
Yeah, and then that boat comes a cropper.
And it comes, oddly enough, went down just outside Sheerness, and Sheerness has this sort of, it's a sort of graveyard of boats, including a very major wartime vessel with huge masts and things, which eventually they had to take off. And any of you who've read the very considerable volume by Patrick Wright, that story is told at length as a sort of evocation of the Isle of Sheppey, which takes a bit of evoking.
While we were in the back of the maxi, I'm sure quite a lot of you noticed there were some things rolling about, poking us in the head and eye. What was that?
That was a object without which I really feel very insecure, and that's a shoehorn. I have always needed help to get in and out of shoes and unsatisfactory feet. And on occasion, if I can't find my shoehorn, I have one hanging from the light by my bed, and we have them around the house in strategic points. But if I can't manage that, I have to go and get pencils and things and stick them down the back of my shoes, because otherwise I'll never get my shoes on, in which case I'd never be able to go out, would I?
So shoehorns generally, and they feel like they've slightly disappeared from sort of popular currency, a popular culture, I guess, because, I haven't worn like proper shoes, I wear trainers. I mean, if I needed help to get into these, that would be a disaster.
They should be very beautiful. They should be made of horn and things.
Which they were originally, weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you sort of could, it's another use for a late cow.
A late cow. Lovely. In the horse hospital, that feels like a nice thing to have evoked. So have you got a collection of these? I mean, are they beloved items in your house?
No, they're essentials. Total essentials. After the toothbrush.
Okay. Literally after the toothbrush. It's like the next thing you do.
No.
Nice. And, I mean, they're an item that becomes popularised in the Renaissance. Elizabeth I apparently had 18 of them. They were historically like a very coveted item, and they've become quite a luxury item again. So even though they might no longer be a thing that everybody uses, they've sort of weirdly become quite a kind of sought after, expensive, monogrammed.
Well, if you look at really beautiful ancient shoes, I happen to find myself slightly by mistake at the rather extraordinary, slightly grotesque exhibition of Vanbrugh at Blenheim. And there are a lot of, the standout item for me were the shoes, and presumably the dukedoms of Marlborough's ladies' shoes kept in large cupboards or something. But you wouldn't really be able to get in or out of those shoes without damaging them unless you had a very fine shoehorn.
So does this mean that you've essentially got a set of the most extraordinarily complicated shoes?
Yeah.
Colour me surprised.
Oh, my shoes?
No.
I mean, my shoes are all from You know, it's pathetic. But I still need the shoehorns.
Well, don't give them up. I mean,
No.
you know, I think the shoehorn is a very valuable thing. Partly because it's sort of slightly disappeared from our everyday lives as an object, especially when you're having to use a pencil.
No, when I really indulged myself in shoes and first went to Italy and got the sort of shoes that probably are the reason that my feet are in the state they are, it means I have to have shoehorns around. Yes, you would never have used a shoehorn because they were just little sort of gorgeous things.
Well, lovely. Well, these have been two very gorgeous things at a slightly opposing scale, the shoehorn and the nuclear power station. But thank you very much for sharing your amazing niche choices with us. You obviously kidnapped us. We didn't really have much choice.
What do I do with you next?
You've got to drive us back, unfortunately. That's the problem. So how can people find out more about your work? And because you've written about the kind of area that the nuclear power station's in, haven't you?
I have. I wrote a book called Excellent Essex, which is, I believe, still in print. I just checked the publisher. Excellent Essex was a sort of, well, it was just pre-lockdown, wasn't it? It came out with immaculate timing just before lockdown. Otherwise, I think everything I've written is out of print.
I mean, your book Villages of Vision is like an absolute classic. You know, that has been through many editions over the years, and you know, it's an amazing classic, isn't it?
Thank you. And I mean, it's so embarrassing that people sort of wonder if, you know, I wrote that book, it came out when it came out, and people think, well, she can't be still alive. Well, there it is.
Well, you very much are, and very much still in the kidnapping game. So, yes, I'm glad to hear it. Well, and then also you've got a website, haven't you?
Yes, I've got a website. I struggle with it a bit, but it is there. Yes. And, I can be found through the website, should anyone wish to.
Well, lovely. Well, thank you very much for sharing your amazing choices with us. Unfortunately, now this means you've got to drive us back to the horse hospital, where horses are currently being treated for exposure to a Magnox reactor. And we can free all of these good people from your dastardly kidnapping spree. Thanks so much to Concrete Atlantis for having us, and to everyone who's been kidnapped this afternoon, and to the amazing Gillian Darley.